congratulations. I am super excited to welcome you into our fall 2021 class. This has been one of our most competitive years. So for the students in the room, congratulations. Just the mere fact that you're admitted and you're sitting in this room is a huge accomplishment. You should definitely celebrate it. We're very excited to welcome you in our class. Today's Hawk Talk is very unique in a sense. It's going to cover a few different programs at Hunter that are dear to my heart. They're smaller programs. I love the students in these programs. So I really hope that today is going to give you a short overview of the programs that we have on hand. And hopefully you'll see if this is something that you may want to pursue as a major, as a minor, or just take up a class or two and see if that's aligns with your interests further down the line. So without further, one reminder, if you have questions, you are welcome to ask your questions live. Again, we're totally in a meeting mode because we want to see you. But if you would like to ask your questions live, keep until the end. We will definitely have a live Q&A at the end of the session. And if you feel a little bit more on the shy side, you can still ask your questions. There's a chat on the bottom of your screen somewhere. I will ask those questions that will come in the chat live at the end of the session. So either way, you will definitely get your questions answered. So without further ado, I would love to pass it on to Professor Baden from Anthropology.
Great, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for coming. I'm excited to meet all of you. And, if ever, I'll give you a quick rundown today of what our department entails. But if ever you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, make a Zoom with me, or, send me an email, and I'm happy to chat with you. So just a quick intro to who I am. So my name is Andrea Baden. I'm the academic advisor in the Department of Anthropology. I am a primate behaviorist and molecular ecologist. So basically what that means is I study lemurs, their behavior, how they're genetically related to each other, and what that means for the evolution of their behavior. But to give you a sense of what our department sort of more broadly entails, we actually study people. So you may think like, what the heck? She just said she studies lemurs, but supposedly you people study people. Well, we do, we study people. So our diversity, our cultural practices, our social and political relationships, our evolutionary history, that's where lemurs come in, and also our changing environments through time and what that means for our changing behaviors and our evolution. And our department is really unique in the sense that it offers diverse and unique perspectives on topics ranging from racism and inequality to biodiversity, conservation, and climate change to varied cultures throughout New York City, right? So it's a very holistic, very sort of interdisciplinary field in that way. And ultimately, the goals of our department are to teach students how to understand contemporary global issues through an anthropological lens and how these issues reflect fundamental human concerns. So to give you a sense of the way that our department is laid out, we take a four-field approach. So there are sort of four subdisciplines within our department. We have cultural anthropology, which is probably the one most people are familiar with. So studying human populations, human cultures, how we interact with each other as societies. We also study linguistics, so using language, the form and function of language in different contexts and how that can inform us about cultural practices and evolution. We also study archaeology, which is the material culture of populations, so not necessarily studying the humans themselves, but the artifacts they leave behind and what that can tell us about those different societies. And then also biological anthropology, which is studying human and non-human primate evolutionary history. So how we got to be the way we are today and why that might be. We also offer several different minors. So our major as a whole is four fields. So it's very comprehensive in the way that we ask students to sort of look at the discipline, but then we do also offer minors where you can focus specifically on any one of those four major subdisciplines, if that's what you're interested in doing. And also just to give you a sense of how diverse and varied the interests are within our department, we have folks studying conservation, and I have a list here so I don't forget this: conservation biology, paleontology, so studying primate fossils, medical anthropology, human rights, social behavior, infant care, primate evolution, class and global economic differentiation, and politics and lived experiences of race, gender, and sexuality. So we're kind of like a one-stop shop. You're interested in it, we probably offer it. So that's really, and along those same lines, we offer diverse research experiences to students as well. So we have a whole bunch of different labs. We have a nutrition lab, a hormone lab, a genetics lab, a primate paleo lab, and then an archaeology lab. So lots of hands-on experiential learning. If that's something you're interested in, you're not required to, but we all have active research programs. So if you're really interested in getting involved and figuring out, you know, whether this is something that's for you, please reach out to any of us. You can reach out to me, but also any of the members of our department. We're really excited to get people involved in our research. And I just want to end with a quick anecdote. So actually, as a student, I had like 5,000 different majors growing up, right? So I started as elementary education, then I did art photography, realized I wasn't good enough at art photography. I'm never going to make a living doing this. So then I went into photojournalism, not that that's any easier, did a study abroad to Madagascar just for fun. I wanted to get a new experience, realized I could actually study lemurs as a job. And immediately came home as a second semester junior and changed my major. So this is just to say that, you know, I think we get very myopic in our interests and we feel like we have to pick a major really quick and just do it and go and get your degree and move on. But I feel like college is really your opportunity to explore. And so try a class, a class in every single one of these different departments and see what sticks, because I feel like you're not going to know what you like until you try it. So, you know, that's my sort of closing advice to you is, you know, we welcome everybody in the department. Please come check it out, but check out lots of other majors as well. And with that, I'll turn this over to Professor Brown.
Wow, thank you so much, Professor Baden, for that. And I'm Anthony Brown, the chair of the Department of Africana and Puerto Rican Latino Studies. I'm very happy to be here and to get a chance to meet you. I know this is a very exciting time, you know, to be, you know, admitted to college and begin that journey. And I certainly remember the feeling and the euphoria I had when I got accepted to college. Africana and Puerto Rican Latino Studies is an interdisciplinary department. We look at and explore the history of people of African descent in the Americas, the Caribbean, and Africa, as well as Puerto Ricans and the broader Latino experience. Our department was created in 1969, and really one of the unique departments in our country that combines Africana and Latinx studies. I have several of my colleagues who are, who have joined me here, and so I'm going to turn it over now to Professor Baez, who will, offer some brief remarks. We have a brief PowerPoint for you, but again, I know how exciting this is, and and as Professor Baez is pulling up our presentation, I started as a labor relations major and took one Africana Studies course, and it changed my life. So I can certainly echo the importance of exploring, other fields, other disciplines, because you may find something that really drives your passion. And so for me, this has been a lifelong journey after having taken that one class. So I hope, again, you explore the many options and possibilities here at Hunter. So I'll turn it over.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jillian Baez. I'm a professor also in Africana and Puerto Rican / Latino Studies. I am happy to say that I'm also an alum. I double majored in AFPRL and Media Studies, went on to do my PhD at the University of Illinois, taught at other places, and then came back. It's been almost 2 years now. So I'm really happy. I'm very happy, and I'm also very proud to say that I'm an alum. We have a PowerPoint presentation. Some of these, some of these have already been covered by Professor Brown, and we may not get to all of it. So perhaps this is something we could share in a different format as well later. But we have up here an image of our 50th anniversary, which just happened 2 years ago. So we are a longstanding department. We have a long history, not only here at Hunter and at CUNY, but in terms of the history of ethnic studies across the country. I'm going to actually stop in case Professor Edie Rhodes, you want to step in and talk a little bit about, and if you want to stop and talk about any of these slides, feel free to just jump in.
Okay. No,
We
you
worked
go
on
on
this
with
together.
this one.
So some of them are mine and some of them are Professor Edie Rhodes.
Yeah, so people very often wonder what they can do with Africana and or Puerto Rican Latino and Latino studies. And quite frankly, in our society, it's very much stereotyped. But you can do whatever you were going to do with any other major unless it is science or mathematically based. Actually, your diploma, I don't believe, actually lists what it is that you're majoring in. And majors, you have to remember, like our major is 30 credits. You need 120 credits to graduate. And so even if you decide to not major or double major or minor, you should at least be taking 1 or 2 courses in the department to make up your 120 credits. So some of the areas that people have gone into, first of all, they go into graduate work and professional school studies, education, law, journalism, social work, urban planning, public health, medicine, business, politics, international affairs. These are just some of the areas that people go into. And you will see on later slides some of the other areas that people have actually, some of our graduates have gone into. It's very, very diverse. We actually have had people who have studied in the sciences and, going into medical careers, but took courses or minored or double majored in this department because the people that they were going to serve largely come from the Black and or Puerto Rican Latino communities. Okay, you can change it.
Okay.
Jillian. These are currently our full-time faculty members, and each person actually represents a different area of study. My particular area of study is African American history and African American women. Is something that I introduced in the department. Also, the study of Blacks in New York. I think that very often people forget about the local communities, and it's the local communities that ground people, make them feel like they are part of something. So I'm from New York. I went through all the public schools in New York City. It wasn't until I went to college that I went to private universities, but I'm a product of New York City public schools.
Why don't we have, we also have Professor Denis Rosario here, and also Professor Torres.
Yes.
Do you each want to go in and introduce yourselves?
I can go. Yes, I'm Milagros Denis Rosario. I'm the director of the Africana and Puerto Rican Latino Studies at the department, and I'm from Puerto Rico. I came to study in the United States in the 90s, late 90s, and I also want to share that I'm proud in certain degree. My master's degree is in Africana Studies, and then when I went on to do a PhD, I did in Latin America and Caribbean, with emphasis on the African diaspora in Latin America. My primary area of study is Puerto Ricans and Afro-Latinos, and I think that the background that I received in African studies, even though I was in another institution, helped me to create a different theoretical framework to understand the experiences of people of African descent in the Latin American communities and here in the United States.
Arlene?
So good afternoon. I'm Arlene Torres, and I'm really delighted that a number of students have joined us today. And I'm even more excited that you're curious about kind of the intersection of courses and departments that focus on culture and that focus on race and ethnicity, and gender and sexuality. I'm a first generation college student, have spent many years in the professoriate, and I teach courses on Black identity in Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the United States. And I'm also very much interested in trying to understand the experiences of Latinos comparatively across the country. I'm actually a trained cultural anthropologist. And so I bring that to bear in the interdisciplinary courses that I teach in Africana, Puerto Rican, and Latino studies. And I often tell students, because I've had that interdisciplinary training, I'm kind of a closet historian, literary scholar, and feminist scholar. And I like to bring all of those perspectives to bear on what I teach in the department. So welcome. I'm excited that you have joined us today, and you've got lots of decisions to make. And I certainly hope that when you join us here at Hunter in the fall, that you will consider the range of wonderful courses that we teach in the department, as well as across the other departments that are represented today.
I would just like to add that this department was student generated. It was the activism of students in the latter part of the civil rights movement or the freedom movement that led to this department. And we have always acted, I think that many of us anyway, have acted in various capacities within the department that were outside of our actual discipline. So my discipline is history, but as our Professor Torres was saying, you know, you end up doing a number of different things with your students. So you actually represent, even though not formally, you represent different disciplines according to needs of students. We have always been very, very student-centered in our department, and we offer, and you will see actually a slide to it. We offer field work, which will be explained when that slide comes up. So this gives you a breakdown of the major requirements as they exist right now. There are 3 different new tracks that are being added to the department. They will not become effective for about another year, year and a half, something like that. And so right now, if you were coming in the fall, this is the, you know, what it is that you would largely be presented with. And this is what you are not beholden to this, but it is something that we recommend for an orderly progression within the department. So do you want to speak about field work, Jillian, or do you want me to do it?
I'm happy to speak about it, and of course you can jump in too, because you know the most recent experiences students have had. But the fieldwork requirement, it is you will have just seen it right on the other slides as a required. I'm gonna say course in quotes, because it isn't like the other courses. It is experiential learning, meaning it's hands-on learning. You work with a community organization, usually, you know, in New York City and the surrounding area, that works specifically with Black and or Puerto Rican / Latino communities. This is, you know, there are a number of ways that you could see this. Some people have talked about this as like service learning. So learning while you are in service, right, to a particular community, your community engagement. And so this is really, it's a really good experience, not only to gain hands-on skills, but I view it as really important, and really this department has been a forerunner in this because we've been doing this for decades. it's really an opportunity to apply everything that you're learning in the classroom, right? Because so much of our work is historically based. Some of the courses also focus on larger concepts and theories. And this is the opportunity, and it's a really unique opportunity in most of the humanities and social sciences, where you really get to go out into the community and apply what you've learned. In my experience, when I was a student, I did work in the Bronx with an organization called Casita Maria Settlement House that did a lot of work with the local Latino community in terms of social services and providing educational access. And that was an amazing experience. And as a matter of fact, it was so amazing that I ended up after the field work, doing the field work class, I ended up staying with them, working with them part-time for the year after. And it was really integral in terms of, how I viewed research, right? And being able to use that in concert with what the community needs. I don't know if Joanne, if you want to talk a little bit more.
I was so into what it was that you were saying, because you are a poster person for field work. Everything that Professor Matthias has said is certainly true. I just want to tell students that this is something that students wanted. The students who fought for this department wanted this course because they wanted them to never forget the communities from which they had come. And I think that that is so important. A lot of times people really, even living in communities, have no idea of what it is that people go through in those communities. We have a number of students who participate in various ways, but one of the ways is in pantries and soup kitchens. And students have come back and told me time and time again, look, I don't have a lot of time, I'm working, I'm trying to do this, but you know what? I am going to continue to participate. So I was very interested in hearing what you said with regard to that, because that is something that a number of students actually say. They'll say, I had no idea that there was the kind of need for food that there is, or I had no idea. For those students who are working with people who are speaking various languages, and because they're able to help fill out forms and different things of that sort. I mean, they never realized.
Professor Edie Rose, thank you so much for that. Just in the interest of time, can we just fast forward to the slide with some of our recent graduates so we can then pass it on to the next set of presenters? Thank you. All right. So just very briefly, as was mentioned earlier, our graduates span the spectrum in terms of careers that our discipline trains them for. So as you see here on the slide, one of our graduates from 2008, former valedictorian, she's currently a professor at Boston University. After Hunter, she went to UC Berkeley and got her degree, and now she is a member of the professoriate. Next slide, please. This is Dr. Arabia Millet, one of my former students. In the last year or so, you've seen her on CNN and MSNBC in a number of programs as she was attending to folks who contracted the virus, and was very passionate, if you saw her in those interviews, talking about the issue of health and the disproportionate impact of the virus on Black and Latinx communities. So this is, one of our graduates certainly that has gone on and used, again, her training in very creative ways in terms of servicing our community. Next slide, please. And this is Professor Donovan Ramon, also, again, a graduate of the department. He's currently a professor at Kentucky State, has a new book coming out, but has also, made enormous contributions in a very short period of time, looking at literature of the African diaspora. Former Mellon Mays Fellow here at Hunter. We can talk more about that as we move forward. And next slide, please. All right. And this is Andres Matthias Ortiz, also a former graduate of the department. He, as you can see here, he's an associate dean at Mercy College. All right. So this is just a flavor of the kinds of careers that our students have entered into after graduating from Hunter. So you know, we can certainly supply you with additional areas and fields that our graduates have certainly partaken in. This is our social media pages. So if you can take a look at our Facebook, our Twitter account. Certainly feel free to email any of us with additional questions, and we'll be more than happy to respond to you. So at this time, I want to pass on, pass the mic over to my colleague, Professor Gilbert.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to be joining you here today. It's really exciting. And I get the benefit now of going third after my colleagues have shared. No, but this is really true. Like I get the benefit of everything else everybody has already said, because there's extraordinary kind of overlap and also real commonalities between what a lot of us do here. I'm so excited to welcome you and really congratulations. It's a strange time, but we're really glad to meet you here on Zoom and hope to see you soon on campus, whatever that means. My name is Jen Gilbert, and I teach in Women and Gender Studies. My own undergraduate degree was studying politics and feminist studies, and that's still what I do. My background and area degree is in political science. But when I went to college, I was sure I was going to go to law school. And I didn't plan on taking a political theory course and then becoming a political theorist, but that is what happens. And so, much to my parents' dismay. I, like everybody else shared, what I really would encourage you to do is explore everything. I would explore you, just as everybody said, I would really, really strongly encourage you to take lots of different kinds of classes. And this is really like your Common Core should not be like a punishment. It should be an opportunity to really do that exploration work. And many of us here teach courses that are part of like the pluralism diversity requirement that you have. And those courses are really a gateway for us into oftentimes our majors, but also minors and fields of study, also just areas of exploration. And also what I would say to you is that for better and worse, and this really builds on what other people have shared with you, and it may be confusing to your parents, but really what you should do is study what you love. The reasons for that have to do in part with for better and worse, there's a real professionalization of studies that is happening now far more in graduate school. And that your undergraduate degree in some cases has very little to do, not very little to do with what you may end up doing, but that specialization often now happens more in a graduate school setting. And that in fact, I know for us that people having degrees in feminist studies and gender studies and sexuality studies, like degrees in Africana studies, like degrees in anthropology, that if people go and then apply to law school or apply to medical school, it is in fact a real diversification. Law schools don't want to admit only pre-law and government students. That is the truth. And part of what we know about our own success in terms of placements in those ways, or in terms of getting jobs, is that those things in fact stand out to people. So in part, this is about kind of like really listening to yourself and following kind of what end up making sense, right? What ends up making sense for you. Not only like, and just as colleagues were sharing, we've had 3 or 4 recent students who have gone into both and had really successful admission in medical school and nursing school, who were not hard science majors. They took hard science prerequisites and then were majors in the last student who just did who just is on the cusp of graduating and has now been admitted, has a degree in gender studies and a minor in human rights, and she's going to medical school, right? So it's the kind of thing where, and that those things for her, right, the studying of human rights around the globe precisely relates to the ways in which she wants to practice medicine. And that's part of what, right, that's part of what college is about in terms of like layering of experiences. We teach courses in gender and sexuality studies that have to do with studying sexuality and gender as structures, but also in terms of like critical identities, right? So much the same way that my colleagues talked about feminist work, and feminist work appears in anthropology and in AFPRL, the work of AFPRL, the department. We in our department study the intersection of gender and race and class and disability studies. We, for example, outside of education, offer, I think for better and worse in certain ways, the highest concentration of work on disabilities that happens. And so, that's some of the kinds of things that are important to us. I teach classes on bathroom segregation and policy, on white supremacy, and of course on masculinities. Some of the courses that my colleagues offer that are really popular in our department are courses on pre-K through 12 sex education, on the prison system, on disability public policy, on food politics, on reproductive health, on hip hop feminisms. We have a minor, right? We have a couple different paths in our minor, including one that relates to LGBT studies and sexualities, like particularly. So there's different ways to sort of branch off and do that work. And we really encourage you to do those things. And just as people were sharing about experiential study, right? We have lots of different opportunities for students to do internships, both outside internships with organizations, more traditional ones like working on like reproductive health and in domestic violence, but also issues that you might not immediately think of. For example, I had a student last semester who worked for the city on housing policy, but it was explicitly gendered work, right? In that way, although it also related, right, to a bunch of other things, in just those, right, in just those kinds of ways, because everything is classed and everything is raced and everything is gendered. We have, I'm going to put into the chat, rather than do slides, I'm going to put into the chat the way our major is structured. So there's the link to our website up above, and then we have different areas of concentration. One of the ones that isn't as visible, but is in the pipeline for us, is we are a co-major with education for students who are in education, and also soon we'll be offering an area in education that is part of the ways of building on some of the success in some ways of like the sex ed course that we teach and other work like that. As similarly, in just the same way, our students are lawyers, our students are doctors, our students are educators, our students are, and will become people who go to schools into public health, in social work, right? We have I would say the largest cohort of our majors are in what we would think of as the helping professions, although I would say like nursing is beyond that, like a very incredibly strong link to public health and social work. And then we also have links to some existing centers within CUNY, the Center for Lesbian and Gay Studies at the Graduate Center, but also, and very importantly, we have a link and share faculty with the Welfare Rights Initiative inside Hunter College, the Bella Abzug Center. We, like some of my colleagues here, teach cross-listed classes with each other, but also with entities like the Human Rights Program, like the Public Policy Program, like the program, the Center for LGBT Studies. These are exciting, right, things in the world, right? And we want to encourage you to come in, right, and bring your interests and explore and get new interests, right, as you do it. We hope that you will start clubs. We hope that you will join clubs, right? One of the things I can't help but share, like, we have a lot of really exciting alumni in our program. We have somebody who's currently working right now as an assistant district attorney, working on issues of domestic violence, human rights attorneys, professors, but I can't help but share that just 3 years ago, Jocelyn Quar graduated from Women and Gender Studies at Hunter College, and she is running for city council. And I put the link to her chat in the chat, and I'm in fact going to be reaching out to a bunch of my colleagues to try to help push Jocelyn's campaign. But she is running for city council and has the endorsement of the Working Families Party. But just a few years ago was a student focusing on interpersonal violence and reproductive justice and issues around immigration, right? Studying with all of us. And so you never know what's possible.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was a stellar overview for the students in the room. You guys got a little snippets of everything. And believe it or not, my dear faculty members, we have questions. So I say we go ahead and go right into the Q&A. The first question came in for anthropology. You mentioned that there is, mainly because of the order, so no preference here, I promise. You mentioned, the student is asking, you mentioned that there are labs that students can work in. How do they find this type of placement? Where do they go? What do they start? How do they find the research?
Sure. There's lots of different ways. One is to set up a meeting with me, and I'm happy to go through some of the different options. We also provide that information on our website, and we're currently in the process of revamping the website. So it's kind of, we're turning over at the moment, so it should be updated soon. But we do currently have a drop-down menu that provides links to all of the different labs from all of the different faculty. And so what I would say is, do a little research, go visit everybody's lab pages. We've done a pretty good job, I think, of laying out the research that we're interested in. And if you see anyone who strikes your fancy or any kind of particular topic that people are working on, don't be shy and just reach out and chat with us and ask questions. And we're happy to give you rundowns of what we're currently working on, what kinds of opportunities we have at the moment. And also, I do have to say that most of the faculty are really interested in getting people engaged. So even if it's not something we're directly focused on right now, we're happy to work with you to develop a project that you can do on your own too. So yeah, just, I guess the short answer is just reach out. Don't be shy and reach out and talk to us.
Thank you. I put your email in the chat, so hopefully for the students who were just asking this question, you guys have the contact information right there. The next question I think is for all three programs, as it's a pretty general question. Students are asking, how large are your classes? How many students should they expect? So since Professor Gabori was last, I'm gonna pick on you first, if that's okay. Women and Gender Studies.
Great. I would say that most of our classes are around 30 to 35 students, with exceptions, a few exceptions higher than that, an occasional larger jumbo class, but that's abnormal, in part because of the layout of the college. But we want classes really to be smaller, right? And we would love to see class size shrink, in fact. And then with handfuls of classes that are more tailored, that are like capstone course, or a few courses that focus on writing and specialties within the major, and then do kind of organized internship work.
Thank you. Next up, Professor Brown, do you want to, how big are your classes?
Yes, similarly, for our, say, 100 level classes, 35 to 40, and for our 300 level classes, 15 to 25, smaller. Yeah, we don't have those huge jumbo classes that some departments do, and certainly for our field work, the numbers are even smaller. So there's certainly a great degree of intimacy in terms of the smallness and the ability to interact with peers and the professor, and we certainly like that model quite a bit.
Thank you. Professor Baden?
Same answer. So we do have a couple of pathway courses that are larger. So I would say our largest courses are about, well, these days, since we're online, they're quite a bit larger. They're about 130 students right now, but typically in person, they're about 80 max. But then when we are doing, anything 200 level and above, it's anywhere from, what is the minimum these days? Like 10 students up to about 20. So also very small, tends to be a lot more discussion style classes, a lot less, someone lecturing at you. It's a lot more engaging, I think, and discussion based.
Thank you. I think it helps to note for some students who may be freshmen in the room, there's a lot of words that are coming out from faculty, things like pathways and things like core requirements. So, the lingo is always going to be there for us, but for those of you who are freshmen, it's good to know that your Hunter degree consists of a few different parts. One part of that is what we call the core requirements, and that's something that every student at Hunter will have to take. So everyone has to take a little bit of history, of math, of science, kind of type of stuff, right? So that's the core requirements. Then the second part of your Hunter degree will be your major or minor, so something that you really focus on, something that like just your major, right? And I think what you're hearing with the core requirements and the pathways and the class sizes, really the 100 level classes, the introductory classes, could be potentially, like Professor Baden said, a little larger. But then once you get sort of higher into the major, once you focus your studies a little more, the classes will be shrunk a great deal. So if you're sitting behind the scenes and you're asking yourself, what am I doing? What's the thing? This is what we mean when we say sort of introductory courses, core requirements. And it's totally okay that you don't know. I see a few questions have popped up already. The next question that's pretty interesting, I would say, is how do you think your department has adapted to this new virtual environment? What should the students expect for the fall semester? And before we get into that, I will say that in general, Hunter is expected to be about 25% to have about 25% of our coursework in person. The 25% for the whole community means classes that really can't be virtual. So things like things like chemistry labs, perhaps. We have animal behavior labs on campus, so we gotta feed the animals, right? Things like that. That's the plan, the major plan for the fall semester. But how has your department specifically adapted to COVID life? How has the community been in that? Anyone wants to start? Professor Baden, all you.
Yeah, I think actually there are aspects of this transition and adaptation to COVID life that have worked really well. And there are actually parts of it that I think I'm going to keep moving forward just in terms of course organization, things like that. But so just to give you a concrete example of one way that I've been able to adapt my coursework is that, for instance, last semester I taught field methods and primatology course. And normally we would go out into, we'd go into Central Park and learn how to do ecological sampling methods, or we'd go to Central Park Zoo and figure out how to watch monkeys and collect behavioral data on them. But what I was able to do last semester was actually invite a whole bunch of experts virtually to teach different lectures. So it's been pretty cool actually I had people from Madagascar Zoom in and give lectures on how they do their fieldwork in Madagascar. And I've had, people from Arizona and California and Texas. So it's actually lifted a lot of barriers in certain ways, I think. So that it's actually been pretty fun. And we've had some really interesting and exciting discussions in that way. So it's one way that we've been able to do things.
That's absolutely phenomenal. Anyone else wants to add to this?
Professor Torres, you want to go?
Okay, so I teach, for example, a course this semester that's called Introduction to Culture and Ethnicity. And every semester I focus on a different group. And this semester I focused on the experiences of people of Mexican descent. And I do comparative work to teach students in the class about the experiences of Mexicans in the Southwest, and then also in the Midwest. And one of the exciting things about that, in keeping with what Professor Baden said, I invite some of my wonderful colleagues that I worked with for over the course of 20 years when I was a professor in the Midwest to join the class and to talk about their experiences and to listen to questions and engage in discussion with students about some of the very articles and books that they're reading. And so it's nice to get the perspective of the author themselves in our discussions. The other thing that's kind of exciting about teaching under these circumstances is that it requires that faculty be much more creative and super organized. So I develop PowerPoints for all of my classes. I have videos, documentaries, newspaper articles, and I upload all of those so that even though I provide a lecture, the students have an opportunity to revisit all of that online because the material is there and readily accessible. And so the opportunity for students to review and to make sure that they've captured everything I've talked about in class during my lectures and during the discussions, provide students with a means to critically stay engaged with the class.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor Gilbert.
I agree that I've been really happy to have guest lecturers like come in, and like it's been really exciting to do that. But also what I would add is individual conferencing and advising is way up. Probably everyone here can share, everyone here is because I think that when we post something on the door saying I'll be in my office between 3 and 4 and also make an appointment, I think that sometimes the also make an appointment gets lost a little bit. But here on Zoom, it's been way easier to sort of convey we can make an appointment at lots of different times of the day. And I had one this morning at 8 a.m. right? I mean, like lots of different times of the day where that student would not have been in my office, right? From Southeast Queens, right? Into my office. And like that kind of access. And also I've done way more like individual writing workshops and conferences on papers in much the same way. The other thing I wanted to say to you is there are a handful of credits that you are permitted to take and encouraged to take on a process that we call e-permit. And what that means is studying across CUNY. I will sometimes point at my window because I'm really, many of us here are lucky to have windows with really spectacular views. And I will point at John Jay College and say, do you see it? The bus goes right there in 20 minutes. And I cannot always get students to go and take a course in the very thing they most want to study at Brooklyn College, at for God forbid, College of Staten Island, right? I mean, like there's a course at College of Staten Island on James Baldwin that I'm always telling my students like, go, please go. Here's how the schedule would work. But guess what? They've been able to do it on Zoom. And so I would say, I would say actually this is one of the things that I hope we find ways to continue in particular ways.
I'm very much with you on that. I think that our students are also enjoying the fact that they can sort of try out a few different things, and there's no more limitation on scheduling, right? You don't have to necessarily like, oh, I have a class at Silberman, I have to be back on the main campus in 3 minutes. How do I do that? Like that just out of the window. And that's been fantastic to see my students actually do a lot of that stuff. The next question I think is pretty cool for everyone to answer too. And we only have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions, but we have a lot more of them. Students are asking, what do you think would be the most surprising class to see in your curriculum? I think, Professor Gabori, you mentioned a hip hop and feminism class. This is where it came from, I think. So what do you think is the most surprising class that our students would be able to see in your curriculum?
My own course on bathroom politics is a surprise to many of my colleagues. So I would say that it would be my course or hip hop feminisms, or maybe maybe the course on prisons, but and a course on indigenous food practices. So it just depends, right?
You can keep going, it sounds like.
Yeah, I could keep going.
Yeah. How about AFPRL? Anyone?
Wow, we have so many. I wouldn't say it was surprising, but a course that certainly students, to be self-serving. My course on poverty in Black and Latinx communities. Also, we have a hip hop course. Also, hip hop studies has become certainly quite important. We have courses looking at the African experience, African descended experience in Britain. Jillian teaches. Jillian, talk about some of the courses you teach dealing with communications.
Yeah, this semester I'm teaching a Latinos in Media course that's cross-listed between our department and the Film and Media department. The students love that course, but I've had a lot of feedback about them being surprised that it was on the books and available this semester. And they didn't realize that they needed the course until they took it. So we've been having a really great time. And just to dovetail with what was said before about online education, that was actually ended up being a great course to teach online because the students have more opportunities to work through multimedia that, in class, you're switching between the technology and students have the time to go through it. And as Professor Torres mentioned, you also have the archive there that they can go back to. So it's been a really good experience.
Thank you. Professor Baden, surprising class in Anthro?
I think I sort of echo everyone else in that it's maybe more the diversity of classes that's surprising, because we have what maybe you would traditionally think of as cultural anthropology. We've got the anthropology of food or the anthropology of music, but then you can go from something like that to human adaptations or human anatomy or primate genetics and evolutionary history. So I think it is, or field methods. I guess that's probably the most surprising to people, because they figure, how on earth are you going to study field methods in New York City? So yeah, just diverse, creative, always changing depending on political events or current events, I should say, things like that too. So.
Thank you. And I think our last question for today, just because that's all we have time for, students are asking if it's possible to do a study abroad program with being one of your majors. Have you had students who have studied abroad? Where have they gone? What have they done, so to speak? Professor Brown?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, due to the pandemic, there are no study abroad currently, but in previous years, we've had students study abroad in Puerto Rico, at the University of West Indies. Professor Edie Rose, what other places have our students
They've
studied
studied
abroad?
in Ghana. There's been
In
a
Ghana.
number of students who have done Ghana and also Brazil.
Brazil, yeah. So this is a sampling of the kinds of places, certainly, that are germane to our field of study that our students have been able to partake in.
Awesome. Professor Gabori?
Yep, similarly, both lots of the kinds of programs that are offered by the study abroad program, right? I mean, I think we've had majors on almost all those kinds of locations, right? Which have included also some recent placements in Italy and Australia, right? In Central America, right? I mean, really, there's ample opportunity to study abroad, and then also there's some other opportunities for also placement programs. In some of those other kinds of programs that are similar to both that there's like a semester in DC, but there's also a similar component to some programs that are outside the US in that way.
Thank you. Last but not least, Professor Baden.
So in our department, we actually have faculty that offer 3 different study abroad programs, formal study abroad programs. So Jessica Rothman offers a winter study abroad in Uganda, where you go and learn about primate evolution and conservation, which is really cool. And then you get to go to Queen Elizabeth National Park too and go see, you can sort of compare and contrast the rainforest with African savanna, which is pretty neat. We also have Tom McGovern, who offers an archaeology field school in Iceland. And then I offer a Madagascar study abroad program, which is in the summertime, and it's a comparative primate ecosystems where you basically start on the east coast of Madagascar in the rainforest and then hit every biome in Madagascar as you head west. And so you basically go rainforest, central high plateau, dry forest, spiny desert, and then you end up in mangrove swamps and go scuba diving on a coral reef. So that's really fun, and also doing cultural and conservation related things along the way. So those are the 3 that are formally offered through our department. And then as has already been mentioned, we do also bring students with us to the field in sort of less formalized ways. So Chris Gilbert works out west in Montana, and he actually digs up primate fossils out on the BLM lands out there. So that's pretty cool. You get to go camping and look for teeny tiny little primate fossils out there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specifically through our department. We do also offer lots of opportunities that are sort of in collaboration with other institutions elsewhere too, though.
I will say, just to top all of this off, I went to the archaeology prep trip. So the students that were going on their archaeological trip, you know, we run a lot of pictures and videos and admissions. So we're like, hey, do you mind sharing some when you come back, type of thing. And the type of stuff that they were telling us when they came back was absolutely phenomenal. They were on an island, away from everything. There was no Wi-Fi, there was no internet. They had to take a boat. They take the car on a boat to go get food once a week because there's no store in the place. It was just phenomenal. And all of them came back like hyped up, really, really hyped up. So for the students who asked about the education abroad, I highly, highly recommend. And if you go, please take me with you. Just remember that, okay? I would like to say thank you to my presenters for being with us today. I really appreciate your time and the students that we have in the room. Thank you so much for coming. Once again, congratulations on your admission to the fall 2021 class. If you think Hunter is what you would like to call home for your college life, all you have to do is go to your CUNY first and accept our offer of admission by May 1st. Don't forget, May 1st is the national commitment deadline, so you want to make sure you kind of make that decision by then. Another thing, if you have questions for the students in any of these programs, or if you have questions for students in other programs too, there's a really cool feature. It's called Unibuddy on our page. All you have to do is go to our admissions website. There's a little button that says chat with students, and then you'll be able to find students either within the same academic program, somebody from the same hometown, same academic year, freshman transfer, whatever it is you want to find them on, you can definitely filter them out, and you can message the students the questions that you may be interested in. They love talking to you, and for some reason, you know, when you ask them what questions are coming in, everyone's like, oh, they want to know about you know, how do you get around campus and how do you take escalators and stuff? So ask them better questions, I would say. Put out questions about classes, professors, and things like that. So once again, thank you. Looking forward to welcoming you in our fall 2021 class, and have an awesome weekend, everyone. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.